What does the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe believe in? It's obviously trying to say something. It makes dozens of tongue-in-cheek references to satirize the video game industry, but the game never shows its hand. It never points the player to a definitive interpretation of its meaning. So just where is it? The Stanley Parable is the story of a man named Stanley, whose office co-workers disappear before he embarks on a journey through their generic labyrinthine facility, all the while his every decision is being seen by an omnipresent narrator voiced by Kevin Brighting.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
But you don't have to comply.
Yo, did he just walk up slowly?
This was not the correct way to the meeting room.
With this power of free choice, you can walk through any open hallway you see. You can ride forbidden elevators, press buttons, you can somehow view a museum of the game's development inside the game, and you can even do this.
Whoops, looks like I was wrong.
But after every major decision and ending, the game resets from the beginning in Stanley's office. Yet what makes this game so great is not its premise, but its creativity and effort. You see, the game only has 2 mostly unbreakable rules for its continuity. Stanley can never interact with another human, and the narrator is always present and can manipulate Stanley's position and the world around him at will. Other than that, there are almost no limits to what absurd things you can encounter in this building. And every time you give in to your curiosity and leave the beaten path, you're consistently rewarded with novel circumstances or endearing dialogue. Take the infamous confusion ending, for example. After ignoring the narrator's will and using an elevator, you find yourself in a basement. Then you spoil the entire game, and the narrator attempts to reset to Stanley's office. But now instead of 2 doors, there are 6. So he restarts again, and now there are no doors, so we turn around and encounter some spooky non-Euclidean geometry, and then he restarts again. Then we meet the Stanley Parable adventure line, who leads us to spoiling the story a second time, and what I described wasn't even the full extent of one ending, and already it begs a lot of questions. How is the narrator so powerful? He seems to be able to open doors and restart the game, but he doesn't know what makes those doors disappear? And why is the yellow line consistently referred to as a sentient entity? When the narrator introduces it, he specifically says that he employed the help of the adventure line, like it's just some freelance laborer who he commissioned for the job. And while the line is certainly a gag, as you play the game you think about these things and want to search more and more for answers, which leads to more and more interesting endings, which makes you want to search even deeper. I mean, in the 2013 version, you get to a point where you can play Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft. You can't mine or craft, but you can walk. At a time when this is what Minecraft thumbnails looked like.
Hey, how's it going? I've actually got something for you. This is the bread that you asked me to get, and you can now go make me a sandwich.
It really felt like anything could happen in the Stanley Parable. Like the only limit to the game's wonder and mystery was that of the developer's time and imagination. It made the game feel infinite. So in 2016, I decided to plumb the depths. I watched videos and videos showing every ending, every Easter egg, every bit of knowledge I could possibly find to make it make sense, to make the game feel whole. Something about it made every second of gameplay feel worthwhile. Every second made me feel like it was leading me to something rich and important and hidden, and I wanted desperately to reach the bottom of it, to unlock that hidden knowledge that I could sense was lurking within. But I failed. And then I went on to play Geometry Dash for 2,000 hours and start a mediocre YouTube channel. But beneath all the time you spend frolicking about, there's always something off about this game.
Someone was following Stanley. He was sure of it. If he checked over his shoulder now, he would surely catch them. It was only a matter of time.
Even the premise that all of Stanley's co-workers have simultaneously disappeared is a little creepy. Were they all vaporized by alien invaders? Did they all get hit by asteroids on the drive to work? Maybe they got sent to Skibbity, Ohio by the Sigma Rizzler. But the game never tells us. But the game never tells us.
That's where everyone would be. Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room, and from then on, he would never be alone ever again.
Yo, did he just walk up slowly and slowly walk?
He's just walking there, menacingly.
And speaking of creepy, there's a small chance you can see this guy walking here every time the game resets. And I think this is absolutely genius because it's terrifying when you see it for the first time by accident like I did. And then he's never acknowledged out loud by the narrator, at all. He goes against everything you've been led to believe up to this point. I mean, the whole inciting incident is that Stanley's co-workers have disappeared, but this guy is just here? Could everyone else be hiding? Like, is he some supernatural being who can transcend the shackles of our mortal plane? And what does it mean for the game as a whole? What could it mean? It really means nothing. We never see him again. He's just a clever way to stick uncertainty in the player's mind. Before liminal spaces had a name and the backroom's image went mainstream, we had the Stanley Parable and its empty, sterile hallways. Everything about the presentation, and the soundtrack especially, creates this sense of looming tension that never really gets resolved since you always reset from square one. In effect, you can never truly leave. Just take the view from Stanley's office as an example of this tension. After every ending reset, the screen fades from black and we stand here, gazing out of his door. Within the frame, we see Stanley's office interior, his door frame, an open work area, and another doorway to a bright window. Every part of the composition is driving our vision to narrow in on the window, which causes the player to want to move forward and progress in the game. The developers accomplished this visually with a couple uses of contrast. There's a notable contrast in brightness, with Stanley's office being very dark, the open space being significantly brighter, and the window being pure white. There's also an activity contrast. Stanley's wall is quite flat and mundane, making us want to leave it, and we can tell from the black ceiling line in this open area that the room continues outside of the frame to Stanley's left. Likewise, we can infer that the window continues further to the right outside of its framing doorway, which instantly tells the audience that this is definitely not a dead end. There's more beyond it. But this moment doesn't just tell the player where to go while incentivizing them to go there, it also shows the game's surreal qualities before the player has even pressed a button. It can be easy to miss, but it's an intentional stylistic choice that every single window in the game is pure white and almost divinely bright at that. This allows the game to have windows without really putting anything behind them that could hint at human activity that would undermine Stanley's unnatural isolation. And the image is noticeably claustrophobic. This middle third of the frame is entirely designed to pull us forward with no regard to the right or left. Its closed-in and narrow focus eliminates any nuance of choice in this moment, which begs to question just how significant the player's choices can actually be outside the office when the game resets endlessly. This makes it the perfect image to greet players after every choice-led pathway has been exhausted. Maybe I'm overthinking this analysis, but I just love this image. I've probably spent whole minutes staring at it after some of Ultra Deluxe's late game endings, and whew boy, you just wait till we get there, buddy. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe was teased in 2018 in another instance of the development team's impeccable skill for advertising. I mean, they're just absolutely flawless record for promo videos. Go watch the Raphael trailer right now. Right now, please. Right now!
From this point, he might use Hermophrylli's ethereal presence to detect nearby mineral deposits, or perhaps he might train the bicycle in the art of undoing temporal paradoxes.
But it was delayed 3 years. And I played it and it was pretty good. In my eyes, it's the definitive version of the game, and it is a very, very distinct experience compared to playing the original. So once you boot up the game and complete a few vanilla endings, you'll find the new content door, wherein the game explicitly acknowledges its status as a game and successor to the Stanley Parable, setting a precedent of fourth wall annihilation that decimates the original's fragile appearance of a self-contained and strictly diegetic world. We are off to a great start, ladies and gentlemen. After Alex Hirsch finishes hyping up this ultra deluxe content that took billions of man-hours to develop and years of constant hard work and dedication and love and passion for gaming, we are revealed jumping. You can jump 36 times. That's it. That's the new content. Game over. Bye. So the narrator, enraged by this egregious display of sloth, resets and leads Stanley down a vent to a pleasant little cabin full of nostalgic Stanley Parable memorabilia to remember what made the game so great in the first place. And of course, he constructed all of this single-handedly with his mystical powers, because he's really like that. Among these pieces of history are several positive reviews for the Stanley Parable, until a door to the game's reputation basement is opened, revealing negative Steam reviews.
I can't even imagine what's been collecting down here. Surely these reviews were glowing as well, weren't they? Honestly, I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious and unfunny, with his humor and dialogue proving to be more irritating than entertaining. Unfunny! I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to make a serious work of art. For someone who prefers non-linear games, this preachiness gets annoying fast. Preachy? Stanley? I'm not preachy, am I? You can tell me if I'm preachy. Honestly, you can. Oh, goodness. This is actually quite shocking for me. Oh dear. What an awful memory to have to hold on to. These black marks on my otherwise unimpeachable track record. I feel like a failure. Like I let these people down. Perhaps the Stanley Parable isn't quite as sterling as I always remembered.
Now, I'd like to point out that these negative reviews visually dominate a hidden majority of positive Steam reviews behind and around them. At the time of writing, 92% of the 2013 Stanley Parable's real-life Steam reviews are positive, and I think the narrator's attitude towards these statistically insignificant bits of vitriol reflects an artist's immediate attitude toward criticism. You could have 100 people tell you that you made something awesome, but when you find 2 who critique it in a way that mirrors exactly what makes you insecure about it, suddenly the floodgates are open and you feel like a failure. But you're not a failure. A lot of people have had experiences in their life that cause your art to never resonate with them, and that's okay. It's impossible to be all things to all people. My grandparents wouldn't understand in a million years why I loved the Stanley Parable so much, because they're normal people who weren't raised on YouTube video essays. So the Stanley Parable's norm subversion goes over their heads because they never needed to be consciously aware of the norms that the game is satirizing. And that's okay. If 20 people laugh at your joke but 2 people think it's annoying, guess what? That joke was still funny. But if we're not careful, those distant heckles have a way of warping our expectations, making us feel like creating things and releasing them publicly is a waste of time, like no one will see our work in the first place, and even if they do, it would only make their lives worse by causing them to squander their valuable time on your sloppy garbage. But Stanley proceeds nonetheless.
What's this one got to say? You constantly have to stop doing anything so the narrator can catch up with his long-winded explanations of what's happening. I wish there was a skip button. A skip button? Well, yes. Yes, I think we can do that. If I'm truly too preachy, then maybe letting you skip ahead for just a moment, surely it couldn't hurt. Yes, a skip button we shall have. And here it is. Go ahead and give it a shot. I'll pop you forward in time so that the second my incessant droning starts to bore. Oh, you're back, you see. You were only frozen in time for a few minutes, but it was plenty of time for me to deliver a long, rambling monologue full of unnecessary verbal flourishes. Well there, sport. You really did catch me rambling on a bit, didn't you? But that's the power of the button. The minute I... Okay. Okay, welcome back, Stanley. Now, I should say that the amount of time the button has been skipping through is becoming longer and longer. That last one was, well, I want to say maybe 30, 45 minutes? It's not unendurable by any means, but it's, well, there's really... Stanley, please don't push the button again. It's been 12 hours. You've just been frozen there. I don't know why the skips are getting longer, but they're really, truly getting longer, and my God, there's no way out of the room. Opinion matters so much to me. Oh, Stanley, you're back. You're back. Oh, my goodness. I have someone to talk to again. Stanley, I think it's been a week. Or 2 weeks. Let us welcome him. I've been saying... Let us... This... Have you ever sat down in one place and not moved for one entire year? Let me describe it for you. To begin with, there is only regret. There is only the turning wheel of missed opportunities. I felt nothing at all. But they didn't understand the... Is never the end, is never the...
It's kinda surreal seeing memes on Instagram romanticizing life as an American adolescent in the pandemic, because 2020 at the time felt like a slow end of the world. Every day felt like an endless purgatory where our lives were divorced from meaning. We were all cursed to wander online and do nothing but ponder endlessly for months. This is what the skip button ending feels like if you empathize with the narrator. After enough skips, you're just left with guilt and an abyss before so much time has passed that you emerge, but you're still forced to carry the silence. There's no fanfare to celebrate your escape, it's just barren, because you weren't willing to sit and appreciate what you had before it was taken away.
And then, because it was said, because it was spoken, now it simply has to happen. The most immediate desires, every single thing demanded by every person at every moment in time. If someone wants it, then it's a crime not to bring it into being. Have we been given to indulging every fleeting whim for no reason other than to do so? Yes! Yes! It seems that this is now the world we live in. It seems that we are a people living in such bleakness and discomfort with ourselves that our entertainment is now our lives. It has come to represent us. It absolutely must speak to who we are as people, because otherwise, without our entertainment, we have nothing. Without entertainment, we would have to face inward toward the cruel bleakness inside ourselves. We would turn to look at our deeper nature and find a resounding emptiness gazing back with unyielding aggression. And so because of this, we require that our amusements and our playthings and our flights of fancy be so impossibly captivating that they consume all of our attention, turn our heads completely away from the bleakness. In effect, we have demanded that our entertainment be the collapse of ourselves. What a pitiful reflection of humanity these entertainments are.
For about 2 years after the summer of 2022 to basically now, there was a period where I was very cynical and ashamed to make videos because I thought the value of my work would be indistinguishable from the worthless sludge that dominates a typical mindless social media feed. But it's not now, and it wasn't then. This ending and this game as a whole were something that reminded me that I have ideas worth sharing. If the team behind it can make something and release it online that feels truly meaningful, maybe I could too. Granted, the Stanley Parable wasn't the only thing that revitalized my outlook. There's still all these people. But it was a big deal. And this ending really just strikes a chord unlike any other. A lot of the personal benefit creatively also came from just getting off of YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. They're still a part of life, but there was a long time where my attention span and brain were so fried that watching Instagram Reels was the only thing I did if I wasn't studying or working out. And that was very, very bad, because there's no final satisfaction or end to that. It's an infinite hole, and it's always best to just cut your losses and let go instead of hoping for that one transcendent reel that will make life feel easy again. At the end of the day, it's best to open your horizons and learn how to live with yourself. But when you're chronically stressed and you feel trapped, just like we did during COVID, forgetting your problems even for a moment feels like an unbelievable relief. But chasing that happiness ultimately kills you after long enough because you fail to attend to your responsibilities. And yes, attending to them can feel intolerable at times, but it does get better. Everything passes. Every period of unbearable life can pass with enough honesty and proactive struggle. It's rarely as quick or convenient as we'd like, but it all still passes. It all does. All the commentary on the Stanley Parable mentioned its themes: free will, player choice in video games, and determinism to some degree. Writers would often point to these themes and praise the game just for having them, without identifying what the Stanley Parable was saying about them. Even I wrote this video to try and figure out what it was trying to say, and I still can't tell you what their attitude towards free will is in 2024. In the 2011 Half-Life 2 mod, it was pretty on the nose. Free will was framed as a comfortable lie nested within a predetermined world in that game. But now it's become far more ambiguous and nuanced. The writing has shifted far from the nihilistic leanings of the 2011 mod. So while the parables of 2011 and 13 were about a player's relationship to their games, Ultra Deluxe is about an artist's relationship to their work. It grapples with the prospect of making a follow-up to something beloved and struggling to live up to the high reputation forged by an older version of yourself that may not represent your current life. It grapples with the pressures of an audience, real or imaginary, and through this, the narrator is a stand-in for the artist. At numerous points he calls the Stanley Parable his game, and tries to take ownership of it and direct the story to his own intentions. But no matter how hard he tries, he can never control it to be exactly what he wants. From the adventure line to the missing doors and the confusion ending, and the fact that the skip button continues to skip over exponentially more and more time with each press, all of these go against his will. But what's beautiful about the game is the fact that the narrator can't get what he wants. It's greater than the sum of its parts because Stanley, the player, the audience, chooses to muck it up and explore territory beyond the scope of one man's intention. It's just like how, in real life, people like me who create things and release them to the world are heavily influenced by our audiences. You guys show us what works and what doesn't work and help us learn where to steer ourselves to improve our craft. Sometimes it hurts, yes. Even when 92% of people love your game, the 8% still find a way to bruise that ego. But we need that input, good or bad. Without an audience, we'd all be like Squidward. We'd grow cynical because our efforts are never even acknowledged. And the Stanley Parable, as I see it, is a lovely metaphor for that learning process. The narrator needs Stanley just as much as Stanley yearns for the novelty that he provides. When they're separated by eons of time in the skip button ending, it's really troubling, but that feeling of loss makes you appreciate everything that you, as a player, have in the real world. It makes you want to attend to your relationships because we will all decay one day. It reminds us that life has meaning simply because we perceive that it does. If someone were to offer you a sandwich while you were starving on the street, you wouldn't be thinking about how small that sandwich is in comparison to the universe, or how all the people who work to prepare that sandwich are going to die and be forgotten by the coming generations just like you. No, you just eat the sandwich because you're hungry. That sandwich might have no significance to a sated man, but the importance and meaning it has to you is just as real as the dirt on the ground and the clouds in the air. Why should something be unimportant just because it's temporary? Why should any moment of our lives ever be squandered once we've come to see the richness within us and each of our peers? But the game resets and this ending is never acknowledged by the narrator again.
Oh yeah, Mr. Krabs.
Still, I haven't even covered most of what's in the game. There's roughly 85% of it that I didn't talk about. It tackles Western consumerism and the entertainment market's appetite for sequels. It's really great, so please feel free to check it out for yourself. And just remember, life is good because we will all die. And Jesus loves you.